This week on The Beit Din.
My child has been in a public school, and I choose a Jewish day school. I want a school that will meet my child's needs, and that's why, you know, we've gathered together because we want a Jewish education, but our children need this little special help.
Now, we could do this by raising the tuition across the board. However, the parents of the other children would object to this. They may feel that why should they be paying for a teacher that their children will not be using?
The Beit Din, the Jewish court of law, is a rabbinical court that functions on behalf of those who voluntarily come before it for religious adjudication of civil issues. It thrives today as a court of arbitration, whose decisions are generally upheld by the civil courts of our land. Welcome to the Beit Din, the court of the Jewish people. In this case before the Beit Din today, Mrs. Levin, a parent of a child with learning disabilities and herself representing a group of parents of children with learning disabilities, has requested admission for her child to the Shalom Day School, a Jewish day school in her community. The day school claims, unfortunately, that they cannot provide adequate education for children with learning disabilities, and they're represented here today by their principal, Mrs. Jacobs, who says that, unfortunately, they have neither the resources nor the staff to accommodate such a request. If, on the other hand, the parent is willing to provide further financial support, or the community is willing to do so, then, of course, the school is willing to consider the request. The case of the learning limitations. Sitting on the Beit Din today are Rabbi Mordecai Simon, Dayan, Rabbi Moses Meshaloff, of Beit Din, Rabbi Robert Marks, Dayan.
Mrs. Jacobs and Ms. Levin, we're very glad that you come with this problem to us, because for us there's nothing as important as the education of the future generation of the Jewish people. And your particular problem is something that really has not been thoroughly discussed before. Mrs. Jacobs, do you in your school at present have any classes for children with learning disabilities?
No, we do not.
Could you have them?
We could if we had the funds for it, but we would have to get a special teacher in special education.
Mrs. Levin, are there many children like yours who have learning disabilities?
There are approximately 10 or 12 children that we have right now.
In other words, you feel, are they all of the same age?
No, they're of different ages.
Mrs. Jacobs, do you think that you could treat these as one learning group?
No, children with learning disabilities are all different, and each one is different.
Could one teacher take care of them?
But a teacher who is skilled in this knows how to differentiate and work with them if it's a small enough group. But we need a teacher who is skilled in secular studies and Hebrew studies and is certified in special education.
Has your child had any education whatsoever till now?
Yes, my child has been in a public school, and I choose a Jewish day school. I want a school that will meet my child's needs, and that's why, you know, we've gathered together because we want a Jewish education, but our children need this little special help.
Now, you do know that it takes money to run a school and that there are tuition fees. Are you able to meet these fees?
I am able to meet the fees of the tuition for the school, but the school presently does not provide any services for these children, and an additional fee for tutoring and other services for our kids would be way too much of a financial burden on us.
How do you meet your budget, Mrs. Jacobs?
We have our fundraising functions as well as tuition, you know, bazaars and events that we have, the usual things that all schools have. Now, we could do this by raising the tuition across the board. However, the parents of the other children would object to this. They may feel that why should they be paying for a teacher that their children will not be using? And so that presents another problem.
Mrs. Levine, could I ask you, up until this point, or how do your children receive a religious education?
Through the synagogue.
Through the synagogue?
Yes.
And they have some sort of a facility that I hear you saying is it's fine, it's wonderful, but it's not adequate for what we have in
Right,
mind.
I feel that a Jewish day school would meet their needs both in their Jewish religion and their secular education.
Have either of you, you, Mrs. Levine, as the head of a delegation of representative spokesmen of parents of children who are handicapped, and you, Mrs. Jacobs, as the principal of a school, have you ever gone to your Jewish Federation and petitioned and indicated this is a need in the community, and we, if given the funds, can set up the proper facilities, and we as the parents feel that this is something which the community, we as members of this, active members of the community, that it is a service due to us as our other services. Have either of you gone to the federations?
No, I've come to the school to ask them to provide this service for these children.
But never to the community
No.
itself?
Well, Shalom Day School gets money from the Federation.
Mrs. Jacobs, I want to pursue that line of questioning. You do receive funds from Jewish communal sources as well
Yes.
as from the fundraising activities that you have internally
Correct,
within the
yes.
congregation. Is that correct? In your determination of priorities, you must make some decisions then as to which children you will educate. And it sounds to me as if you've made a decision that you will educate children who do not have learning disabilities. Is that a correct assumption?
No, I don't think that we would put it quite that way. We haven't made the decision that we would not educate children who have learning disabilities. We would
But
certainly
nevertheless, in your allocation of funds, that's where your funds seem to be going. You're saying to this court that you don't have funds for educating children with special problems, but evidently you do have the funds for educating Jewish children who do not have these special problems.
because we do not have a teacher who is certified in special education.
Mrs. Jacobs, have you ever explored the possibility of supplemental state aid? Some states do give special aid to schools that take care of the education of disabled children, children with disabilities.
No,
you
we
looked
have
into it?
not.
Mrs. Levin, have you explored the possibilities with the dozen or so mothers that you're talking about who do have children of getting together to pool resources to secure special education for your children?
Well,
Has this been done?
Our discussion has been that we've come to the school to ask if they can either pull from the community or other parents to help our children. You know, tzedakah is a Jewish way of giving, and it should be all children entitled to a good Jewish education.
Well, you have a very vital question. I hope that you've come to the right people, because we're going to deliberate and see if we can come to some satisfactory conclusion to help both of you, the school and the children who need the education. We'll retire now to deliberate on your problem.
Thank you.
Let's now join the rabbis as they deliberate.
Gentlemen, I think that we're all of one thought in this case, and I think our hearts go out both to the principal and the mother. We are all for the importance of Jewish education. And when we say the hero is, you're the Lord our God, the Lord is one, the first thing we say is, love the Lord your God, and next thing, v'shenantim levanecha, and teach your children diligently. It's very important, education. The problem here is, how do we get education to a disadvantaged child? And I think that's what we have to put our thoughts together.
And also, of course, the direction, the principle is that prior, as soon as you establish your community, the first thing you do is establish the school. That takes priority over all other communal activities. So that's another emphasis upon the education for all persons.
And there's a community role here, too, that I think has been overlooked. It's easy enough to say the mother and the principal ought to work things out. I think in our decision we ought to call for a meeting of all three groups so that we fulfill the Jewish commandment of teaching our children. Three groups meaning the parents group in this case, the school, and we ought to also involve the fundraising arm of the Jewish community, so that all three can get together and report back to us that some accommodation has been made.
Well, you know, that's all true, but a federation feels that it already has so many obligations, and it's a matter of priorities, and can it take on new obligations? I really want to quote to you, though you know it, I'm certain, a statement that is so that we have to teach others. Coming again from the Maimonides laws, This is chapter 2 of the books on Talmud Torah. And this is what he says. Moshivi Malamdi Tanokot, it is the duty of every community to set up teachers in every province, in every city, in every community, and any city that does not have a school for children is to be excommunicated. Excommunicated.
That's very strong
the
language.
People of the city are required to set up a school and to hire teachers for these children, because only by the breath of the mouth of the children of a religious school do we guarantee the future of the whole Jewish community.
But here everyone is involved. I think we have to say that that school, in deciding not to teach handicapped children, is making a conscious decision. And what I hope our decision will be, and it seems to me that we're in agreement, is that all three parties, the community, the school, and the parents, have to make the sacrifices that will enable this neglected group of children to receive an
And
education.
add also to investigate the availability of public funds to assist in handicap
Yes,
training
we ought
for
to-
them.
we ought to remember
Right.
that.
So
So I
that's the
think that
community
our
responsibility.
view is the same and that our point is clear, and we simply have to impress it upon them.
Right.
We now return to the courtroom to hear the rabbi's decision.
Mr. Levin and Mrs. Jacobs, your problem has led to quite a spirited discussion in the Beth Din itself, because all of us are committed to the same purpose that you have in mind: education, religious education. And for us, as for the Jewish people and the Jewish tradition, every child should be equally given the equal opportunity to receive a Jewish education. But once we agree upon that, we still have two problems to solve. The second one is, how and where do you give the education? And you, Mrs. Jacobs, have said that you can solve that. You can get the teacher, you have the facilities, you have the training, so that's no problem. Then our last problem is, well, where do we get the funds for it? And here we have to be realistic. You have tuition as part of your income. The community has a primary responsibility for education. And every Jewish community must recognize that before all other problems comes the problems of guaranteeing a Jewish future, and that is done through a committed Jewish education. They have that responsibility. Theirs is the first. Parents unquestionably have another responsibility. It costs money to educate Jewish children, and parents have to be ready to make those sacrifices. Just one last thing, we had hoped that by exploration you might find that the state does give additional funds for disabled children. And we wish both of you and the parents every success in getting a thorough Jewish education within your Jewish community. We're glad you've come, and we hope we've been of some help.
Faced with the dilemma of the case of learning limitations, the Beit Din comes back with a report that doesn't really seem to satisfy either party, nevertheless confronts the issue squarely by saying to the parents that you have a responsibility for financing the education of your children, and saying to the school that you need to redouble your efforts and work even harder on behalf of these children with special needs. But you did hear the Beit Din in their deliberations report that they themselves, the members of the Beit Din, were prepared to go ahead and meet with the community and organize the community on behalf of circumstances just like this. While there is no clear-cut and specific answer that we can provide in a case like this, nevertheless, we can see that it requires a concerted effort on all involved to work for the children who are so desperately in need of this kind of particular education, the case of learning limitations. Now, the Beit Din will turn its attention to a case of a young child, a camper at Camp Ner Tamid, who comes to his counselor, Ken Gold, and tells his counselor in confidence that he's contemplating suicide. The counselor goes to his camp director and says to Mark Weiss, the director of Camp Ner Tamid, that a youngster has come to me and has threatened suicide. What should I do? The camp director asks the counselor for the name of the child. The counselor says, I'm sorry, that's privileged information. I'm not going to share it with you today. And so today, the Beit Din is convened on behalf of this youngster who has come to his counselor, the counselor coming to the camp director, and both of them coming to the Beit Din in a case of camper crisis.
Ken and Mark, you have a special responsibility for the campus that you have because you have so much of an influence on them day and night. What kind of a boy is this young fellow that we're talking about, Ken?
Well, he seems to be mentally unstable to me from the conversation that I had with him, which brought about everything. But before that, I had no tip-off. He's one of the kids in my bunk, and there are 13 other kids. And he came to camp. He was very bright-eyed, very excited, enthusiastic to be there. And from what I understand from my conversation with him and basically his entire attitude, is that his problems seem to stem with his home life and not with his camp life. And as we're nearing the end of camp, he seems to be very reluctant to leave, and I think that's the problem.
I see. Mark, when you discuss the campus with the counselors, do they ever come up with the problems of individual youngsters to you?
Yes, they do. We have staff meetings once a week, and we discuss some of the problems that we're having. And most of them are problems that can be taken care of at the counselor level. And
Do you find that they tell you everything, or they keep things to themselves?
no, they're very open. We try to have a real open door policy as far as communication. And whenever there's a problem, they usually come to me and ask for my advice, and I try to give it to them.
I see. Ken, did this young fellow speak with you about this problem? Has he mentioned it to any of the other campers?
Well, I don't honestly know whether he's mentioned it to anyone else, but it was my understanding that I was the only one that he really trusted there and the only one that he came to. I'm not sure if he said anything to anyone else. Maybe they will not disclose his name just as I won't.
Now, you're so close to him. Do you take him seriously? Does he really mean to do away with himself?
At first, I didn't know what to think, but, now I am pretty sure that that's what he intends to do, either before he arrives back at home or once he gets there. I think it's really that bad.
Kent, how long ago did this youngster come to you and indicate his feelings?
He came to me 6 days ago, one afternoon during activities.
You've been handling this all within your own self up until such time?
Well, no. At first, I didn't know what to do, and then later that afternoon, I went to Mark and told him the problem. And the discrepancy here is that I won't disclose his name. He told me not to say anything, and I don't want to lose that camper's trust. I mean, he means a lot to me, and I don't feel it's right to break my word.
Mark, in your orientation and training of your campers at the beginning of the session and these sessions that you have in between, have you ever discussed this possibility of difficulties with the campers in some extreme situations?
We discuss a great deal of problems that can be expected. I mean, when we have such a large amount of kids in a camp, you're obviously going to have things that are not going to go, that are going to surprise us. But we've never had a problem of this nature, and that's one of the reasons that I feel that I need to know the name of this camper, and I think it's a very important matter.
I have two questions for Ken and one for Mark. In a case like this, as we've heard a young man in your care has threatened suicide. We know from cases such as this that the way the threat was delivered, it becomes an important consideration, the manner. Can you tell us as much as possible, Ken, of what was said, or what makes you feel that this is a serious threat as opposed to a teenage thought?
Well, first of all, he was very, very specific on me not mentioning it to anyone else, and I feel that that's probably the right thing to do in this case because, I'm not a psychiatrist, but I have a feeling that when he gets back home, if heat starts coming down and people start trying to reach out to him, that he's going to react on an explosive level. And, you can say, okay, reach out to him. People will try and lend a hand, counsel him and things like that. I don't think that's going to work in this case. I think he'd be very embarrassed if it was brought out and if his parents confronted him with it, and that might drive him over even more.
You say he was very specific about what he tried to do.
Yes, he was.
How would you feel in view of the seriousness of this threat? were he to actually carry this out before help could be got for him? What would be your feelings in terms of your responsibility?
Well, you know, in terms of my responsibility, I do have the responsibility to try and counsel and take care of this kid, which I've been doing on my own level, and trying to reason with him about life and maybe that this is not the right course of action. But, you know, as far as that goes, I really don't think I should break trust with him. I mean, I'm not a lying person, and I don't go back on my word. And he specifically said, do not mention this to anyone else, and I don't
Mark,
feel I
very
should.
briefly, what would you do were you to have this information? What action would you take?
Well, I would probably go and talk to his parents and find out what, make them aware of what was going on, and get them involved and find out as much of their, the kid's background as
Well,
as
we're
quickly as
going to have to
possible.
discuss this among us very carefully, because confidentiality is a very important matter, and a young's life certainly is no less important. We hope to be able to come to some solution. And so we're going to retire for a few minutes to think this over ourselves.
Let's now join the rabbis as they deliberate.
Gentlemen, we now have a very serious problem on our hands. And I think that Ken Gold, the counselor, is very earnest in trying to keep his promise. This is basic to the Jewish religion. The person has to keep his word. It's found in Proverbs, it's found in Deuteronomy. You must keep your words. Once you've made a promise, you have to keep it. But it seems to me that there are certain exceptions to that rule. The very sentence that says, Moses v'secha tishmo, keep what comes forth from your heart, says at the same time, V'al tamod al dam reyecha, do not stand by the blood of your neighbor. We're dealing here with a human life.
And there's a very important issue here. Our interrogation revealed that the young camper who was suicidal was not just using teenage talk, that there was a thought-out plan, that he had contemplated something. There is an issue of pikuach nefesh, of overriding Jewish principle, of that of saving an endangered life. And certainly the life of this young camper, from what our interrogation revealed, is endangered. It seems to me quite clear that the counselor, Ken Gold, has a responsibility, and an urgent one, to do two things. One, to tell the camper that because of the issues involved and because of the safety of his own life, he cannot keep the confidence that he's going to act to protect him, I would put it positively. And two, he must let his camp director, Mark Weiss, know of the dangerous situation in which they are involved, and the family and competent medical help must be quickly invoked in order to protect this young man's life.
I think that the very important part is the confidence that the Ken, the counselor, going to the youngster to indicate to him the basis that he's not breaking a promise that you trusted me and now I'm going to go and tattletale on you. That's not, the point is, I am trying to help and preserve you. Suicide in Jewish tradition it's an act of murder. This is a violation of one of the basic commandments, and even if it's the murder against oneself. So in order to avoid one of the most serious sin of murder, and also to preserve a life, then by all means, that would be the
And
act.
you know what, another factor, even his telling the counselor, the young man's telling the counselor, is a sign, a cry for help.
Right.
And it is the responsibility of the camp to take care of the campers and their health, certainly their lives. So I think we have to get across the
As you quote,
urgency
"Lo tamod b'dam
of
re'echa,"
this
you cannot turn
decision.
your back to an opportunity to help and preserve someone.
The counselor has to tell the camp director has to call in the parents, and the parents have to find a way to save this young man's life.
Right.
We now return to the courtroom to hear the rabbi's decision.
Ken, we admire the fact that the youngsters under your care are so attentive to you and have such confidence and faith and trust in you that they reveal everything to you. You must have a special bond with them, and your respect for confidentiality is one which is very basic in our faith. You do not tell tales. You're not a bearer of tidings, whether they be good or evil. And when there's something is told you in trust, you keep that trust. Otherwise, you would lose the faith of those whom you are there to take care of. On the other hand, we're now talking about a human life. And when we talk about a human life, why, any Jewish law may be violated to save a life. And a camp has special responsibilities to its children for any kind of mishap or illness, whether they be physical, neurological, psychological. And therefore, we feel that there is a three-pronged approach that has to be taken here. First, Ken, you're going to have to sit down with the young man and explain to him why, in this case, you simply cannot keep that confidence, because it is to save his own life. It's going to be your job, Mark, to get in touch with the parents, to tell them what the situation is, and then to help them find psychiatric aid. You have a life in your hands. You have that responsibility, and having spoken with you, we feel that you certainly will meet that, so that this young man will be healthy and live a good, long, useful life.
In the case of the camper crisis, the rabbis of the Beit Din have come to a unanimous conclusion, instructing Ken, the counselor, to tell Mark, his camp director, the name of the lad who's involved in this circumstance, and before doing that, to tell the boy that he is in fact going to tell the camp director of the circumstances. Mark, the camp director, has been instructed to bring this information to the parents, as he had intended to do from the outset, in order that the boy might receive the proper kind of medical treatment in such a circumstance. While the cases of the Beit Din are themselves portrayals, this particular case reflects a circumstance regarding the issue of youth suicide in our country that has taken the nation's concern, as well as the Jewish community specifically. In response to this, the Union of American Hebrew Congregations and the United Synagogue of America, through their task forces on youth suicide, and the Rabbinical Council of America, through its Commission on Family Life, have each of them in their own way responded to the issue of youth suicide, bringing this concern to the attention of rabbis, educators, and communal leaders around the country. If you know of a circumstance involving the issue of youth suicide, we encourage you as well to break the confidence, the advice given not only by the Beit Din in this case, but by those professionals on suicide around the country. There is available in this specific circumstance a brochure regarding the issue of youth suicide, campers in crisis, in camps, and distributed through the American Camping Association, having been undertaken by one of the task forces on youth suicide that I mentioned a moment ago. This case of the Beit Din, like all of our cases, seeks to bring issues to your attention that are of mutual communal concern. We thank you for being with us, and we look forward to seeing you again when the Beit Din, the court of the Jewish people, will meet.